with us. Mohan Nair is the Senior Vice President and Chief Innovation Officer at Cambia Health Solutions. He guides the Innovation Force, an enterprise-wide incubator creating and launching 5 companies in 5 years. He reports to the CEO, who is accountable for 25 businesses totaling $9 billion. His mission is to bring consumer focus, transparency, digital transformation, and new business models to the company and to the market. Mohan, please do join us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us at BTOES Healthcare Live. We very much look forward to your presentation. It's a real gift to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure, Jose. It's good to hear your voice and can you hear me now? Are we all good?
Yes, we can hear.
Fantastic.
Clear. You're coming through great as well on the presentation.
That's fantastic. Well, what a pleasure it is to be with you. I know that we live in a world where I'm calling you from Portland, Oregon, which was in flames just a few days ago, and had my bags packed to evacuate. Now there's smoke that is the most hazardous smoke in the world, and we also have the gift of COVID that has taken lives in our country, totaling about almost 200,000 now, and 6.6 million who have been tested positive or have COVID. And now, why am I saying all that? Well, the context of which we are communicating with you is a small topic of innovation, but innovation in healthcare is particularly important at a time like this. And one has to understand that corporations, who are the bedrock of our society in terms of hiring and growing our economy, need a strong understanding of this skill and strong understanding of this ability to create not just an innovation action or innovation event, but a flywheel, and hence my presentation. I have with me a few members of our team, Caitlin Arps, who is actually doing the slides for me, and then who is also my Director of Innovation, and also Alexis Roloff, who is also joining the group. She is also a Director of Innovation. All three of us will engage with you as appropriate. Let me just say that what this irony of our innovation world is that many people speak, as you can see in the slide, several people speak in tested situations. McKinsey, for one, has checked people's modus on innovation, and everyone's saying that they think their current business models are at risk. Everyone is saying that everyone, as in 84%, are saying that innovation is important and a growth strategy, and by the way, an overused term. And everyone is saying that they are extremely dependent on innovation. But as we look at the next slide, you will see that only 6% of executives are satisfied with what they're doing in innovation. So their aspiration versus execution are extremely different. 82% of organizations run innovation the same way they run the operating incremental performance gains that they expect from their very established legacy, shall I say, as well as business as usual environments. Now, one can ask the question, is there such a thing as business as usual anymore? And it's clear that there isn't any more business as usual, because look at me, I'm calling you from my home and you're listening from your home or from your office you temporarily visited. Now, 72% admit that they're missing opportunities. In other words, they're missing the window of opportunity and hitting the walls of innovation. Why is this distance not closed? What is it that can make us really feel comfortable in the innovation agenda? The next slide will cover some aspects of it, but I hope that you don't take it the wrong way. But we are living in a world of theater. And Netflix is not the only place where we see drama and acting. We see it in innovation in companies as well. Now, we believe sometimes that we can just adopt the habits of innovation and therefore become innovators. We think that if we adopt the processes, we will then become that which we dream we become. So we have painted rooms with whiteboards that you can write. Sometimes you can even write on glass. We have brainstorming sessions with Post-it notes. I know my budget for Post-it notes has quadrupled since we started innovating. We adopt different kinds of dress codes because we think we can be entrepreneurial. We hire, we do petting zoos, excuse the term, but it is one where we bring entrepreneurs and companies that are entrepreneuring into larger institutions. We kind of view them in cages and hope that they will infect us with innovation modus and mores in the hopes that we can transform ourselves. We hire Zooglers, people from Google or anywhere else, or Facebook, the FANG companies, in hopes that they will infuse innovation. We also try to invest. We try to play, since some of us have dollars to spend, we invest in startups and accessing innovation that way, because we again hope that all of these elements working in concert, or some of these elements, will transform the way in which we view innovation as a larger institution. We start talking like a startup. We spend time defining stage gates. We draw some lines, and we make innovation a process when it's actually a discipline. And we expect returns in an immediate way because we think that's how actions should be taken. All this means an expensive attempt at trying to find a recipe. The question is, what is that recipe for you? I don't judge any of these techniques. I think they're all valuable, but isolated by themselves, they're not. They don't serve anything but creating distance between you and the objective you want to serve. Let's move to the next slide, where we're past the theater into some reality. Corporate approaches are clear. They create energy and research and development. They create incubators. They create accelerators, and the difference being the two we can describe in a few minutes. They create a venture arm that invests in startups or invest in emerging businesses, and they sometimes do acquisitions. And then, of course, M&A is the factor. These are all approaches, all valid, all having some element of truth. But the question is, what is the meal you want to cook as you start to build innovation within your own self, and let alone within the company that you serve? The next slide will cover some other factors. There are also some major paradoxes in the innovation culture. One is, what's your orientation towards discovery? Do you like to discover from within the company, or do you like to discover from outside the company? There are many companies and enterprises that actually discount their own people, not in a negative way, but they think that the smart ones are outside. And so they tend to look outside for their orientation of innovation. That's a paradox, because the energy has to be balanced between inside and outside. The comfort with new ideas. If someone comes to you and says, I got an idea, do you drop your pen and listen to them and engage them in a systematic way on how to take that idea forward if it's valid, or clarify? Or do you destroy it with 10 questions that are guaranteed to kill any good idea in the process? Now, we know that ideas fall on the sides of businesses on a regular basis. We know that those ideas are bottom up in many times, but idea out is very important. And what we do is we do top down and we do bottom up, and we forget the idea up, how ideas rise and how the ideas are a bloodstream of our own company, and how do we measure and create comfort in that ideas. I've written 2 articles in Forbes on that matter. If you want to check it out, it would be helpful to share from that point of view. What's your appetite for leaps, or is it incremental that is really important? Does your innovation agenda want incremental growth within your institution to prove value, and then to make leaps the second value? Or is disruptive leaps not really in the picture, even though people say they are? That kind of paradox exists when it comes to funding and thoughts. What's your mode of experimentation? Do you like to experiment by creating markets, or do you like to experiment by creating how you feed a market? Do you experiment with a consistent optimization method, or do you use chaos as an approach? Do you say you want redundancy with a whole bunch of things you want to try and then integrate later, or do you want to make it right the first time? Those modes of experimentation is a mindset and a methodology in the culture of innovation that has to be understood before you start to take on an objective of this nature. And then, of course, the market focus. There are people who feed markets, and there are people who make markets and then feed them. Steve Jobs created markets. others feed them. So what is your center of gravity in your company? Are you a feeder? Are you a market maker? Both are great. Both have value. And both habits have to be part of your vernacular. But the question is, where is your center of gravity initially? I hope these paradoxes don't confuse you, but allow you to think through exactly how you want your center of gravity and your signature for innovation in your company to engage. Now let's talk about some examples, if I may. Let's look at these two pictures. They're visualizations of where ideas form and how they spread. One on the left is a company and one on the right is a company. Notice that on the left, the company starts with a few center of gravities and then locks itself into patents and generates out. On the right, the company has sort of a scattergram of ideas, and they're all running independently and exist, and maybe there are certain hotspots. One is Apple and the other is Google. Both are fantastic, fast-growing, highly assertive companies that are transforming our world. Both have different ways in which they take ideas and express them. The signature is different, but the goals seem to be the same. So one has to understand exactly where your scattergram is and what you believe your philosophy is when you start to energize your company with an agenda on innovation. Beyond these examples, allow me to speak about my example. I am the Chief Innovation Officer and Senior Vice President of Cambia Health Solutions. We are about a $10 billion company. We have access to 70 million Americans through the Blue Cross Blue Shield network, which we own and operate 5 Blue Cross Blue Shield health plans within the space of the northwest of the country. We also have 20 other companies, of which 5 my team has launched, started, and created. The next picture will show you our not-for-profit model and how our not-for-profit model has a for-profit energy to it. There's always a view that a company that's a tax-paying not-for-profit can be slow and not activate, and this shows the trajectory of companies that we launched and built. Actually, we built and launched, but you get it. And the igniters that helped us create ideas within our organization, a number of ideas that we collect and conform. And it's a battle to give people currency and to have them believe in the currency of ideas, and that becomes a different bloodstream that then creates some of these companies. In fact, 3 of these companies were created by employees who became CEOs and general managers. So it kind of tells you that it's also a training ground for great leaders over the period of 10 years. Now, I've been the Chief Innovation Officer for the company for 10 years now. In fact, 10-year anniversary is right up here now. October will be my anniversary. Now, I'm either really bad at what I do and therefore they don't know what to do with me, or I think I know what I'm doing now after 10 years of practicing the art. At least I know how I'm doing it, but not how it can be done. But in that 10 years, I've had some lessons, I've had some understandings, and I hope we can share those at appropriate times in the course of this presentation, which I hope is quick and timely and forces questions for you to grow as well as for me to learn. So with that, let's move to the next slide. Now, what's the flywheel I keep talking about? Well, people say that you have to find a great idea, create it, and then show the world. Well, this flywheel doesn't say that. What it says is you have to find great people, and you have to find people with ideas. You have to show them the way of how they can be their best self, and then create from within the potential for innovation. Now, these flywheels usually are always about a process, and I'm all about people. I want you to understand that ideas without people are just ideas. They live and die the same half-life that everything else is. But people with ideas can transform the world we live in. And so the next slide will help sort of clarify some of that dialogue. You need to have an idea generating engine that allows people to feel their currency in ideas, that they feel that it's their right and responsibility as employees to drop ideas and then to take them. Not just to give them in an elevator to somebody else who's smarter and then walk away and feel nourished by that action. That's how it early happened for me when I was Chief Innovation Officer. People thought, oh, he's going to be the Steve Jobs of the company and he's going to take ideas and he's just going to wear tight jeans and, wear a black t-shirt and everything will be fine. And what I tried very hard to do was to energize the institution so that it can go beyond me and beyond everyone else who is working for me to working with me, shall I say, to drive a cause greater than ourselves. That cause is the transformation of healthcare, the creation of it, the transformation of it to be catalyzed into a person-focused healthcare system that is sustainable economically, both at the person level as well as the institution level. And we have not reached that, and we owe that. And those of you who are all over the world probably recognize that we are merely problems within the diaspora of problems in healthcare across the world. And the idea engine has to wake up and make happen. The realization engine is where you can take an idea and make it real. So the word realization is double entendre, is to take an idea and make it realizable in the eyes of others, because sometimes people will tell you all the ways that it can be. The distribution and scale engine is one thing I keep learning about, because it's great to create a company, create 5 companies, but having it get to the customers, and we have about 2 million, but having them enjoy it, and the innovation throughput that a business needs to be able to take an idea, build an idea, define it, test it, and then deliver it, that throughput is still an issue within my company and within other companies. It's getting it out there quickly and being able to create scale so that you can impact lives as quickly as possible. And then finally, something that I think many don't think about, which is the renewal engine. What does it mean to take ideas and keep them fresh and renew them over and over again? I have ideas that have been 10 years old that are still in our archives, and we use them like old condiments when you make a meal and say, does this work? Is this salt still there? But surprisingly, when you refurbish these ideas and take them into a new format where the idea has met its time to be an idea that is implementable, is something that one has to understand when you create the engines of innovation within your company. Archiving on your right, distributing and scaling, realizing, which is the machinery to make something happen, and then the idea engine that sources it. Now, guess what? There are people who believe that innovation is the assembly of great inventions by other people. That's not a bad story. So you better be good at it, be able to take innovations and make it fundamentally strong. There are others who believe that you want to make everything. There are others who believe that's in between, somehow knowing how to assemble, knowing what the market offers, and knowing how to create your recipe. I'm of the belief that things that are core in the business, things that are going to be core in your business, have to be owned and operated and built. Things that are non-core, that you believe will be non-core in 10 years, you can borrow and you can build outside. The core ability to drive your philosophical view of how innovation should be expressed through humans in the human business is essentially the power of what the flywheel is about. And from that perspective, many launch into innovation exercises with their own footprint, and they step in the wrong thing in the process of doing it. So I suggest that we think about these 4 elements. We think about the system view of it. We consider the human element to it, because innovation is a value in my company. It produces value propositions, but it is still the basic right and privilege of all, not the ones who think they are smarter than others. With that, let me move to the next slide that I hope keeps time with us. I'm moving fast, and I hope that's okay with you. It is only to spur ideas so that we have more time to dialogue and engage. So what does the future for Chief Innovation Officer, and that's what CINO means. And I don't mean chief as a title, I mean it as a role. What does that role define now? And I think it's this next 10 years will be the 10 years of the role becoming a legitimate, even though off-balance sheet role, just like Chief Experience Officer or Chief Digital Officers. These chief roles sometimes are off-balance sheet, but guess what? They have impact to the balance sheet and to the income statement. And those impacts are pretty significant, because in every team, you have a team A and team B. In every corporation, you have a team A and team B. And having a team A do the operational work really well, you have to have a team B that has an equivalent structure to take leaps and new ideas and take them forward, because sometimes team A will forget to be able to define the markets they want to serve in the future. because they have to serve the existing markets in the most efficient, operationally tight way. And you can't argue when you're running an operation. And I ran the front end of Blue Cross Blue Shield for the Northwest for 2 years. And believe me, every time a consultant told me to think out of the box, I wanted to fire him or her. So sometimes you don't have time to do that. You have to activate on the present. Other times you need someone or something or some group that is spreading the idea of thinking ahead and planning and building ahead. Now, what does business reimagine means? Well, I think people figured that out with COVID. I wrote a book in 2010 on business transformation, and it predicted that we will have unknown unknowns attack us, and that we have to build a system within our corporate environment that can anticipate unknown unknowns. Now, logically, how can you anticipate unknown unknowns? Because once you know them, they become knowns. I know that some of you who are Socratic in the way you think will argue that it's not the case. But to be able to anticipate the competencies, the skills, the mindset, the values of your customers as they evolve so that you can reach them is the role of the Chief Innovation Officer and the role of people in innovation. So I used to build new markets, and I used to focus on that. Now I build new competencies because I believe the company has to develop competencies that allow it to match new markets, because new markets without competencies is a failure. Of course, human-centered design is everybody's vernacular. It is a factor. I think there's too much going around. I think too many yellow stickies and too many pens have destroyed our ability to understand that human-centered design was brought to market many, many years ago. And I love IDEO, and I love the team that has brought it to market, and Stanford has brought it to market. But realize that human-centered design is an art form that has been put into a process, but it is a philosophy that has lasted centuries. And we should bring those philosophic viewpoints to the art form and then take it to market in an effective way. And of course, the culture of an institution defines whether anything can grow. And if you don't work on the internal culture of the institution and affect that culture, then you cannot grow new ideas. So people who go out and buy companies, absorb them in, the companies fail and the people leave. Why? Because the soil within the company that they are acquired into does not grow the ability for diversity, for equity, and for inclusiveness. And so let's really think about the way in which we transform our institutions in a much more aggressive, assertive way than what has been lived before. And of course, digital transformation is the accelerator for being able to activate, but human transformation, arriving at digital transformation, is even more important because we cannot digitize our humanity towards the subjects we are trying to create solutions for. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. I hope this helps you. I hope it serves you in some way. You can connect with me, of course, in the usual manner. And there are writings that I have published that will be of help to you. And this helps me because it helps me learn from the questions you ask and helps me understand the choices one makes in growing one's thoughts in the area of innovation. So I hope this serves you. Jose, I hope the questions are coming. If they're not, then I failed you all, but I appreciate and value your time. And I'm going to ask Caitlin and Alexis if they want to participate in any of this. Since I've done it earlier than 35 minutes, I'm going to ask Alexis, who is my Director of Innovation and has been in the company for 20 years and experienced multiple jobs. Alexis, would you, are you on the line and able to be unmuted to give a perspective? You know, she didn't expect it to be called, so it's just me being naughty.
Yeah, I don't know if she has the ability to speak directly with us. I think no, yeah, no, she may. She just needs to unmute. She just needs to unmute herself. Alexis, you're self-muted right now, so if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join and lend some perspective for what it's worth, and appreciate the lessons learned, certainly, and the color you give them, Mohan, from the last 10 years. I really appreciate, and then talking to other organizations as well, the power, because I think there is such, increasingly now with the economy, at least in the US, such a pressure to perform financially that there is a bias towards the operational. But even in that context, the power when you walk into the room and can share an employee story behind the idea of what motivated it and what they're trying to drive change within the industry, usually in service of others or even in service of teams within inside the organization, can be a really powerful effect. So the importance of having those dual operating engines, even as times evolve, I think can't be understated.
Yeah, Alexis was my first teammate that I asked to join this innovation team after I was the chief marketing officer and executive for Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then when I walked in her office and I said, I'm going to build this thing, this group of 10 to 12 people, and we're going to define innovation for businesses, and I'm going to leave my role. Would you join me? She just stood up and took the job. So that kind of tells you the nature of the people we have in our team. Now, Alexis has been with me for 10 years now, but 17 years working in the institutions surrounding it. But Caitlin, on the other hand, if I can give you a few seconds, Caitlin joined just last month, or what, not month, was it 6 months ago? Caitlin joined, but she joined virtually. She could not enjoy the energy of the physicality of our relationships at the innovation team and innovation force. Caitlin, anything to add to what you've observed?
No, I think it's been great. I like to go all in and join a new job right in the midst of a pandemic, but hopefully that helped the post-it note bottom line, as you mentioned. But yeah, I think it's been great. I feel like this is a time when normally people feel extremely isolated from coworkers, family, friends, and sort of still attend a job virtually and feel energized and feel like every day is productive. You're not just, checking things off of your email, you're checking a list, but you're actually fixing a problem. You're fixing a consumer problem, and then in fact you're maybe helping an igniter, as Mohan talked about, the people within the business that have an idea, helping them realize and have that come to fruition. It's been a great honor to join the team, learn from the great brains every single day. So yeah, very interesting new employee startup, but it's been a blessing in disguise, absolutely.
Yep, Caitlin just got posted into one of our sixth delivery that will come out this year. That is a unique proposition and competency that no one's seen yet, and she's just thrown right into it and doing a great job. Now, why did I include two of my teammates? The reason is the philosophy within Innovation Force, our innovation team, is that we never go into anywhere without our teammates. We are always two doing something. So there's no one in our group. And I know that sounds very politically correct, but this has been going on for 10 years, where we go into the challenge of innovation by having someone always be your 6 when you're looking at 12. And when we meet, we debrief after every meeting. We'll debrief after this meeting because we learn from each other. And so it's a mini MBA and a mini training course for everyone in our team to continually be better, and so that you can bring out the better in others. And that purpose of finding great ideas in great people and then enabling that does not take away from the fact that we as a team can activate, can build, can make great ideas. But the issue that's different is our ego is turned to passion and a cause greater than ourselves. And once we do that, we become our better selves. So that's what innovation to us means. With that, Jose, I think I've met your requirements of 30 minutes.
This is great. This is terrific. Thank you, Mohan, for sharing this deep experience and knowledge that you have on the theory and the practice of innovation acceleration. We have had a number of questions that come up. I encourage the audience, our global audience, to continue to ask these questions. I'll monitor them, and I'll relay as many as possible in the times that we have allotted here, which is great. We have plenty of time to talk about it. So I'm going to try to define some logical flow to a few of the questions and get the main themes here. So let's start with some fundamentals, Mohan. How do you even define innovation to start with? You know, one of the things that I like to say is that to have extraordinary innovation, you need to define it in the ordinary terms. And do you have an ordinary definition for innovation that makes it useful for people in the organization to act on that?
Yes, and I don't want to take a long time on it, but I've been working on the next book, and those questions come to mind, because taking complex things like innovation and make it not so distant from the persons who want to experience it. I've had the pleasure of watching over hundreds, I'd say 200-300 people come up with an idea, feel insecure about it, and get encouraged to build, and 5 of them became CEOs, right? So in watching that human experience, I find it very sacred, very beautiful. Invention is the creation of something that has yet to be created. Now, that's almost blasphemous, because frankly, who created anything? But the fact is, invention is that way. Innovation is taking inventions that have reached their time and producing something out of them in 18 months. The ability to assemble inventions and then creating the glue logic that is necessary to produce something of value to others that actually goes beyond the patent is what innovation means to me. Now, the word innovation in the 1800s, 18th century, was called novation. And when they called it novation, it was really to symbolize people who fought the church and who were blasphemous. So they were considered innovators when they broke rules, and they were treated very badly. They were actually labeled. Now, that word has migrated through the centuries to meet us today as people who are now respected in being innovators. I've been studying exactly how that happened, right? How did we become sort of the vogue when in the old days we would be killed? Well, I think it's because we have now a culture that accepts inventions, and in that inventions we've seen the value to humanity, and now we're taking innovations and seeing the value to humanity. But if I were to define innovation again, Jose, I would say that innovations now in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years are going to be those that have human impact, that truly have human value, that are causes greater than ourselves. And those that are selfish will find themselves in a very challenging place. They may be respected, they'll make money, but they'll be in a difficult place. So I hope that helps define what I think innovation ought to be looking like nowadays.
It did. It did. You talked about a concept early on that was very powerful. About you touched on the concept of ego, and there is, of course, there's this great thing. You know, you and I deal with a lot of senior leaders, and we hear about senior leaders talking about egoless approaches to things. And you're sitting there and thinking, really, you talking about not having an ego?
Exactly.
What about
Heisenberg?
about admitting that you have an ego, but you're using this cause to funnel your ego to productive use, right? And I love the way you capture that. And on building on concepts like that, how do you prepare people in an organization for innovation when it comes to values, mindsets, skill sets? What are you looking to develop in people to help you in that innovation journey?
That's a great question and tough one. Yeah, it's kind of. Do you have an hour? You know, but the fact is, principles drive an institution, either subtle or real. And establishing the principles at Cambia was done in 17 years ago when I engaged with the then CEO, who was a powerful principle-driven individual and helped me frame the cause that we wanted to establish and helped me introduce what has already been in the company. There was underlying principles and values that are that sometimes not get enough air. So that is where I tap into values-based innovation versus objective-based innovation. Many companies drive innovation as objective. I focus on the values. And the values are, what is the value you want and what are the principles you want? Number one is that one idea changes all ideas. So you respect the fact that it could be the next one. And so you listen, right? And from that creates inclusivity, a view of equity and a view of diversity all in one. Because when you listen, hopefully you hear. The other is that it's not about you. corporations are very egotistical because they reflect the ego of each individual. And so when egos come together, they form this wonderful mesh of junk that inhibits the traction within institutions because egos are battling and egos create, and sometimes the leader has it and everybody's following that. And it gets to this really wonderful place where nobody gets healthy. They love it because they make a good stock price and everybody doesn't care because the shareholders are making money. But in the end, a part of you goes away every year. That's not the way I think we should function. Principles, although you can choose to do that, make a lot of money really fast and then say you want to save the world afterwards. There are people who do that too. I'd like to make money, save the world at the same time, and also save myself. I believe that that is the way in which compromise is occurring. And so creating a principle-driven organization that is value-based and living those values and showing the way for others to enable their own sense of belief is a gift you give your society if you are a good innovator. If you are an okay innovator, you can just make money and, you know, develop the next big thing and save the world in your own way. I don't judge it. I just choose the former than the latter. That help?
Very good. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. This is very far-reaching concepts. So we talk about principles here, and principles are very important. Mindsets are important. Principles are important. I'm looking at some of the questions and commentary, and I want to build on this a little bit more. You know, if I look back at my own personal experiences, I was very blessed early in my career to have access to Peter Drucker and learn a lot of how he thinks about the world. And then later on, Jim Collins built on a lot of those Drucker concepts. And then Jim talks about great organizations are having three things, right? He talks about a strong set of core values, this relentless drive for progress, and going back to principles, mechanisms that translate the principles into action. Tell me, we talk about kind of the first two. Tell me a little bit about how do we make this a bit more tactical and translate this. What are the mechanisms that organizations must have to translate the principles of innovation into action that creates financial and social value?
Right. So the titration of taking, I'm trying to understand, but a very important question is once you establish your, well, that's a joke to say once you establish, but if you begin your journey towards being a principled or institution that has a cause greater than itself, allow me to use my own language. I believe in causes because causes are taken, missions are given. So when you institutionalize your business, you tend to give a mission and people follow it blindly. Well, guess what? Those days are good, but they are subordinated by causes greater than ourselves. And we see it all around us right now. And we are all asking, Jose, you're asking where you are, I'm asking, what's this meaning to life thing? You know, how do I know I'm contributing meaning? Well, that's been a journey that our society has been going through for years and centuries. It is coming into frame that you can make things better for society. That titration of taking those constructs and driving it into objectives and strategic thrusts, and then turning those into outcomes has been in our world for years, right? Beyond Drucker, Drucker's early writings were about objectives and key results, MBOs, right? Management by objectives. We added balanced scorecard. We added activity-based costing. We added all the other operational tools that, if used in accordance with a mission, they serve the company, but used in accordance with a cause might actually engage the individuals within an institution to want to leap into it rather than to be dragged into the measures that we live in. Now, I wrote a book on balanced scorecard. I wrote a book on activity-based costing. I was in, I taught at Kellogg on the field of measurement. So it's funny that I'm speaking about how the purpose operationalized would do more than the measure operationalized. And yes, I do believe that. I do believe that you can take the current operational effective tools you have, titrate it above to a cause greater than yourself, and activate and animate an institution. And frankly, Cambia is an example of it. Cambia is activated by a cause. If you look at the website, you'll see a cause greater than ourselves, and every single member of the company, 5,000 strong, if you ask them why they're there, they'll say it's because of the cause. But they're also working on a day-to-day with measures. So they don't have to be disjoint, is what I am proposing to all of you.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Mohan, on building on that, on these mechanisms related to the cause now, what is the process that you follow in the organization for identifying, prioritizing, and executing the innovations that you identified that are related to the cause?
Right. Everyone will find, when you find a Christmas tree, there will be everyone will hang their ideas on that tree, right? So if you say the cause is that, everybody will say I have a product that fits that cause. So they'll all run to it in the goodness of their own heart. They're all trying to get on that Christmas tree. So there's a filtering. But before you filter an idea, what we do is we have mechanisms that capture ideas. The technology is there. We have motivated programs that allow for, Shark Tank kind of environments. We have all of the things that you can think of in multiple companies that generate ideas. But most of all, you have to have an organization that listens and that does it ubiquitously. So if you think of the bone structure of a body, you have to think of the nervous system. And the nervous system is what innovation is about. That's a team B flow. And if you can't get that going, you're always struggling with your nervous system talking to the bone structure saying, can I do what I'm doing? And the bone structure says, nope, it's got nothing to do with movement. So if it has nothing to do with musculoskeletal, I'm not interested, right? So that's what the battle between innovation and the current operating environment is. How do you create that balance? How do you create that connectivity? You take ideas and you make them real as quickly as you can. And my team does that. We accelerate ideas. We write business plans. We go build companies. And once you show people that you can do this pretty rapidly, then every individual in the company, 20%, let's say, start to think that they can become a CEO, not from ego, but from the change that they can derive. Once you've got 20%, and by the way, you start to see a flywheel. So that's my solution that I've been working on for 17 years, of which 10 years has been in this role. So it's not easy. It's not like you come in and do 2 years and write a book. It's a hard, on the ground suffering that is in the labor towards the love of your customer. And if you can take that journey, then you're an innovator in my mind. If not, you're people who send notices to everybody saying they're really smart. I mean, that does not impress me. Doesn't impress the world. And most of all, who cares whether you impress me or not? You should be your own witness that you can actually be the innovator you are destined to become, right? So I think there's power in this, and I think that smart people who are on this phone, on this video, are people who have the potential to take it to another level and are waiting for the right spark. And I hope to think that the idea could be the spark that wakes them up today. If that's great, that's great. I don't have big dreams for this meeting being the transformative meeting, but every moment is a moment for choice. And if you choose it, then you can be the greatest you can ever be, right? From an innovative point of view.
Absolutely. Well said. Mohan, one other thing that has emerged here has to do with sustainability of innovation programs. There's, those of us who work across multiple organizations, cross industry, what we have seen the last decade is that it's an incredible creative destruction is happening to innovation programs themselves, because they start with a bang. People, the stereotypical kind of a make fun of motto is that the senior leaders come from the ivory tower. They participate in very colorful post-it note type of sessions for a period of time. But 18 months after the original kickoff, 18 months to 3 years after the original kickoff, half of all innovation programs are dead. And 99% of them will die within 5 years. So the question becomes, what is the secret for longevity and success that you have found, because you're on your 10-year journey here?
Yeah. I'm honored to be in that position to be able to at least give a perspective on this, but I must tell you that a great guiding CEO who gives you range, me reporting to that CEO for 10 years allows me the perspective of transforming the peer group as well as the employees, and gives me not a long distance, but a close enough distance. Number one, I went for operational effectiveness first. I looked at what problems were and went and solved them as quickly as I could. My CEO once said, hey, don't go for the leaps. Try to help and create value for your peers. And once I did that, they at least accepted me for what I was doing. I'll note that I used to be the guy that ran the business, so they know me, and so there was a familiarity. But as we changed the 80% of the leadership, they started having referendums against my team. They were saying, well, why do we need it? Let's take his budget because we need it for what we have to get done today. And so the battle between today and tomorrow will always be there. And you have to earn it every day, and you have to serve it every day. So one, collect and drive ideas within the institution. Two, accelerate problems to solutions that are currently in front of people, not just the future. Three is go create something, go make something. And if you make something and you make the bet and it becomes a big idea that people recognize, and you do it within a 3-year window, you get the flywheel going. And once you get the flywheel going, then your reputation comes before you rather than you having to earn it every time behind you. That help?
That doesn't only help, that is you have just unlocked the keys to the doors to sustainable innovation acceleration in any organization. It's a real privilege and an honor to have you sharing your insights and knowledge and expertise with us. I personally could listen to you all day long and just engage in the discussion, because this is such an important topic for our time. And like you said, when we have purpose-driven organizations who are using innovation as a mechanism to drive that purpose and align the purpose of individuals with the purpose of the organization as we create social benefits, that's a powerful combination. You have a wonderful track record and examples on how to make that happen. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Jose, thank you so much for your coaching as well. Thank you very much. And Brian, who helped solicit me into this conversation. Thank you. Thank you all. And I hope all of you have a good journey in innovation filled with a cause greater than yourselves.
Thank you very much, Mohan.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ladies and gentlemen, fantastic presentation from Mohan Nair here. Wonderful insights. We can continue our conversation on LinkedIn. Go under my name, Jose Pires, on the LinkedIn post. Add your comments in there, add your questions in there. I try to summarize some of the key concepts that I see on the questions panel here coming from you. There are lots of questions. I try to get to as many of them as possible. So this wraps up this segment and sets us up for the final segment of the day, which I'm very excited about, welcoming Maggie Savo, from a healthcare improvement leader at Baylor Scott & White. And Maggie is going to share with us data-driven decisions and how to create demand for actionable insights and develop trusted relationships in your organization on this transformation journey that so many of us are going through in healthcare. So see you at the top of the hour, and look forward to finishing with a great presentation from Maggie Savo. Thank you.